The story of government waste used to make people angry. Now it barely makes the news. Take the ArriveCAN app, a pandemic tool meant to protect borders and streamline travel. It began as an $80,000 project. By the time it was over, nearly $60 million had vanished into a web of contracts, subcontracts, and invoices no one can trace. The work went to GC Strategies, a two-man consulting firm that subcontracted almost everything out. Two men in a basement walked away with millions, while taxpayers got an app that barely worked. And when Parliament demanded answers, one of them, Christian Firth, simply didn't show up. He became the first private citizen in decades summoned to the bar of the House of Commons, and he ignored it. No penalty, no accountability, just silence. This isn't incompetence anymore, it's contempt, the kind that grows when power stops fearing the people it serves. But this isn't about one app, it's about what it represents, the quiet rot that sets in when responsibility is nobody's job and everybody's paycheck. We've built a culture that rewards the appearance of doing something over the discomfort of doing it well. As long as the press release lands, the system calls it success. Look closer and you start to see the pattern everywhere. A society that outsources the hard parts of life, then wonders why nothing works. We outsource production, education, health, even common sense. We trust systems that can't fix a login page to try to fix our lives. And the insult is how normal it's become. No outrage, no accountability, just another headline scrolling by. We shrug, we sigh, we move on. But somewhere deep down, we know this isn't incompetence anymore. It's contempt, the kind that grows when a government forgets to serve people, not processes. Because the truth is simple. When you stop expecting results, failure stops feeling like failure. It starts looking like policy. We didn't lose our edge overnight. We handed it over one industry, one skill, one generation at a time. Once production built identity, we made cars and ships, food and furniture, entire towns around the rhythm of work. A person could point to something, a bridge, a loaf of bread, a line of welds, and say, I built that. Then we started chasing efficiency. It sounded good, modern, global, inevitable. So we offloaded the work, called it progress, and told ourselves we'd move on to something higher. But higher turned out to mean paperwork and regulation. Now the biggest employer in Canada is the public sector. We don't make things anymore. We manage the people who pretend to. The skills that used to define us got replaced by forms, approvals, and endless chains of delegation. Manufacturing, farming, even teaching, everything that once made a community self-reliant was traded for management and oversight. We traded grease and grit for policies and PDFs. This wasn't just economic, it changed how we saw ourselves. When production left, pride went with it. And once pride is gone, so is responsibility. We stopped fixing what was broken, stopped teaching what we knew, stopped asking what would happen if the system failed because we assumed it never would. But the truth is, that's when the real decline began. Not when the factories closed, but when we stopped believing we could build anything ourselves. Somewhere along the way, politics stopped being about building and became about performing. Every party, every government, every era promises to fix the system. But fixing the system would mean admitting it's broken. So instead, they pretend it's working and create new programs. It's easy to mistake motion for progress when your job depends on keeping the machine running. That's what our governments have mastered, the illusion of responsibility. They don't have to solve problems anymore, they just have to announce that they care about them. Policy becomes theater. Press releases replace production. And while one side insists that more government is the answer, the other claims that less government is the cure. But both keep drawing their salaries from the same shrinking pool of real work. We live under an ideology that worships efficiency and control, two values that have nothing to do with competence. And when those values fail, they call it a learning opportunity. No one resigns, no one goes to jail, no one rebuilds. They just commission another study, rename the department, and start over. It's no longer governance, it's brand management, a system addicted to appearances, terrified of substance. And while they argue about who's to blame, the liberals, the conservatives, the corporations, something much quieter has been happening underneath. We've stopped expecting better. The outrage fades faster every time. People roll their eyes, mutter, typical, and move on. That's how the politics of pretending survives, not through power, but through apathy and confusion. Because the moment people start to care again, really care, the whole facade starts to shake. We talk about outsourcing as if it's an economic choice, but what we really outsourced was capacity, the ability to make, to teach, to heal, to feed. In 2000, manufacturing made up about 16% of Canada's GDP. Today, it's closer to 9%, the lowest in modern history. Those jobs didn't disappear, they just moved somewhere cheaper. We traded factories for forms, hands for management, production for policy. In the 1970s, we produced nearly 80% of the food we ate. Now we import more than $30 billion worth of food every year, much of it from countries with lower labor and safety standards. When the shelves run thin, we call it supply chain disruption, but the truth is simpler. We stop growing what sustains us. Education followed the same path. Apprenticeships and trades once built communities. Now less than 10% of Canadian students pursue them. We told a generation that real success meant a desk, not a skill. Now we're short hundreds of thousands of tradespeople and can't build the homes or infrastructure we desperately need. And then there's health. Nearly half of Canadian adults live with at least one chronic disease. 1 in 4 is obese. 1 in 10 has diabetes. The average Canadian spends about 10 hours a day sedentary. We've medicalized what used to be ordinary maintenance of the body, and then wonder why the system is collapsing under its own weight. We've created a country that produces less, repairs less, and moves less, and somehow we call it progress. Because the numbers don't lie. Fewer manufacturers mean fewer exports. Fewer farms mean more imports. Fewer teachers and tradespeople mean fewer builders. Fewer healthy bodies mean more hospitals and higher costs. This is the real audit, not a spreadsheet, but a mirror. A society that forgets how to do things must pay someone else to do them, and the invoice always comes due. You can see it in the cracks of every institution, in the waiting lists, the food prices, the labor shortages, the empty shelves. We outsource the hard parts of life, and now we're paying for it in ways no budget line can fix. But the truth buried under all of this data is that the capability never vanished. It's still there, in us, in communities that remember how to make and mend, in the hands that still know what work feels like. We just stopped valuing it. And the moment we start again, everything changes. In 2020, Canada launched what it called the 24-Hour Movement Guidelines, a sweeping plan to redefine how we live in our bodies. It was ambitious. One set of daily targets for physical activity, sedentary time, and sleep. A simple, elegant idea. Move more, sit less, rest better. The kind of thing that should have changed everything. It didn't. Because there was no plan to make it real. No funding for physician training, no education campaign for the public, no accountability if nothing changed. I don't know if implementation was expected to occur organically, as if awareness would spread through osmosis. 3 years later, fewer than 10% of Canadians have even heard of the guidelines. Fewer than 5% can explain what's in them. And national data show no improvement in activity, sleep, or sedentary behavior since they were introduced. Among children and youth, participation actually dropped. Only 28% now meet the recommended movement targets, and fewer than 18% get enough sleep. This isn't an oversight, it's a pattern. We design frameworks, not follow through. We celebrate the publication, not the practice. We build the scaffolding for a building that never goes up, then commission a report to ask why. It's the same story that plays out in every department. The government announces a success the moment a PDF goes live, and we call it progress, even as the population gets sicker, grows weaker, and more disconnected from our own bodies. The absurdity is almost poetic. The same institutions that locked people inside during a pandemic now want to motivate them to move more through an app and a brochure that they now think will fix these numbers that are failing. Sit less, the policy says, while its architects sit behind screens drafting the next initiative. In other Western democracies, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, similar programs were launched around the same time with the same results. A splash of media coverage, then silence. It's a kind of global theater of wellness where governments pretend to lead and citizens pretend to listen. But the body doesn't respond to press releases. It responds to action, to weight, breath, repetition, the rhythm of living things in motion. And that's what we keep outsourcing, as if someone else could do the moving for us. This is what happens when we outsource what matters. We end up waiting for leadership, for programs, for permission. We wait for someone else to build the bridge, grow the food, write the curriculum, heal the body. And in that waiting, we forget we were always capable of doing it ourselves. Every number in this story, every closed factory, every imported meal, every preventable disease tells the same truth. A society that trades its skill for convenience eventually loses both. But there's another truth hidden in plain sight. The muscle memory of a capable nation doesn't vanish. It just goes dormant. It sits quietly in the people who still know how to make and mend, who still believe that strength is built, not bought. Reclaiming the work doesn't mean turning back time. It means remembering that resilience isn't a government program. It's a culture of participation, of showing up, of moving, of teaching the next person how. It's knowing that responsibility isn't punishment, it's power. The solution was never another app or policy or PDF. It's the same solution that built everything worth keeping, work done with our own hands, shared between people who give a damn about where they live. We don't need to wait for the next announcement. We can start where we are, in our kitchens, our shops, our parks, our bodies. Because every time we act, every time we move, every time we fix what's broken, we reclaim a little piece of what was lost. And that's the quiet revolution no one can outsource. For decades, we've been told that progress meant letting go of labor, of land, of effort, of responsibility. We were promised freedom through efficiency, connection through technology, and care through policy. And yet, what we've built is a culture of dependence, where capability is a memory and accountability is an illusion. But maybe the real progress is what happens when we stop waiting, when we remember that the simplest acts, moving, building, teaching, fixing, are not relics of the past. They're the foundation of a life that works. Because if we've outsourced everything else, there's one thing left that still belongs entirely to us, the choice to do the work ourselves. And that's where every real change begins. If this episode made you stop and think, share it. Talk about it. That's how we start pulling threads that were never meant to be left alone. And if you want more stories that look past the headlines, subscribe, follow, and stay part of the conversation. Because awareness is only the first step. What comes next is up to us. See you next time.